Welcome to today's event for Shared Sentences. I would first of all like to say a special thank you to Kate and Anya, who asked myself and Rory to come along and help make some films for Community Justice Glasgow. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure working with you both, and they both are from media education, so thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
So, sorry. I work myself in criminal justice, and I see the injustice that individuals face every day. And along with making the films, it wasn't just learning skills, but I also got to see the individuals, the services and the organisations that are devoted to making change in our city. And it was beautiful for me to see, because you're so passionate. And with passion comes purpose, it comes perseverance, because we don't give up. And that is what we need. So thank you so much for letting me into your world, and thank you for making such a change.
Thanks. I'd also just like to second everything she said, and it's been great working with you guys for the past couple of years. So thank you. I'm not as well spoken as her, so I have mine written down. But doing these films, so my name is Rory, and I've learned a lot about the projects, and that there are a lot more suitable services other than punitive justice. And right now, people come out of prison worse off than they were, and they're just released back into the community. The projects that we looked at responded with the person, and to help them find the right direction, because they're person-centered projects. What we really want to happen from making these films is for people to know that there are other options out there to help people rather than just locking them away. Options that allow people to heal and grow in their communities, for the victims to get some healing, and also for the perpetrators, right? Because it's like that saying, if you don't deal with your wounds, you're just gonna bleed over the people that didn't cut you. And it takes a community to heal on both sides. So thank you. And we hope that through today, you guys can share your opinions on thoughts and questions that you get from these films. Thanks.
Well done. So sit back and relax, and I hope you all enjoy the films. And thank you all so much for all your effort in making these films. And thank you all for coming today. So I hope you enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed the films. I hope you all enjoyed watching them as we did making them. Thank you to our guests as well for participating in all these films and letting us see really the heart of what they do. So now we're going to do a Q&A. So any questions you have for any one of the ladies, we'll just pass the mic to them and direct the question. So if anyone's got any questions, just raise your hand and we can direct the question. Ladies, if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Hi everybody, I'm Kate Ritchie and I work for Sacro for the Stop Service. We deal with hate crimes.
I'm Emily from the G20 in Maryhill.
Hi, I'm Lorraine Gardner. I work for Glasgow City Council's Early and Effective Intervention team.
Thank you, ladies. So if anyone has any questions, please just raise your hand.
Comments as well.
Comments
we'll pass the mic around. What we were also going to do, if you see my colleague Ian making frantic notes, where it was just we were going to write down any comments from the wider audience, so that when we come back to sort of more in-depth discussions at the breakout tables, we've also got those as a note. So if you wonder why we're rapidly scribbling, that's why. Anyone want to kick us off, and I'll bring the mic.
I was frantically scribbling throughout that, just lots of things that popped into my head. So one of the things that really came through for me was something that was said quite early on in the film about women, and that was about forums for people to help shape policies and practice. And I wondered what people's experience of that has actually been. You know, people have been through the system. Have you had any opportunity? I mean, obviously today is about helping to shape that. and to, you know, hear that voice in policy and practice. But just wondered what your experience of that has been, and if you've had that opportunity, and how that's kind of panned out for you, I suppose.
I think when we're working with service users and STOP, we certainly integrate that into our reports for the Scottish Government, which obviously affects our funding and policy as well. And we also take the feedback really seriously, and it helps to evolve our programme every year when we're delivering to make sure it's efficient and effective.
Thank you, Margaret.
As people who've been through the system yourself, have you had any of those opportunities?
For me, working in my work that I do for Cisco, no, I haven't had any of the opportunities myself. But for we invest in each individual that comes in, and everyone is different, you know. So everyone is individual, and everyone's circumstances is different. And we just invest. We're passionate about what we do, and we try our hardest to make a change.
Thanks, Gemma. I was just asking Rory about somebody who's been through the system yourself, if you feel that you are given those opportunities to kind of shape policy and practice, and what happens around people in the system, if you feel you've been given that opportunity. I know this has been part of that opportunity, but I mean, kind of prior to that, do you feel you get a voice in the system?
Prior to this opportunity, no, I never had any opportunity. It was just continuous punitive justice. And I was caught in that rat wheel.
Thanks. Yeah, it was just something that, you know, came out really strongly. I think it was about the potential of people, and the need to know from the people themselves. And that's why it just made me wonder. Thanks.
Of course. Thank you.
Great question.
I think Tom has a question.
Well, first, thanks. Really great films, Rory, Gemma. Thanks for taking the time to share them with us today. I was just interested, Lorraine, Emily, Kate, why you volunteered to be on screen and what you thought of the final films, because you'd have been, you know, seen it now finally edited.
Oh God, I was terrified, to say the least. Yeah, I thought it was really well done. I thought the structure, it was it was a good structure for anybody who's been through the criminal justice system or who doesn't know of the criminal justice system or is just entering it. And I think that it gives hope. And I think that we need to be given alternatives. Punitive measures are not the way forward. But it was certainly something that we were willing to get involved in, something that we wanted to do, something we felt was really important to tell a story. And my service user that was involved in it as well, I couldn't get him out of the room when he got in. He was like, I want to tell people, I want to tell them what I've been through, I want to tell people not to go down the same pathway as me and how there is help out there. And he's really been through quite a life, to say the least, in his 12 years when he came to me. He was 13 when he finished the programme, and it really is, it's quite a journey. But it's good to catch it at an early stage, and had we not caught it then, I don't know where it would have led. But I don't think it would have been a happy outcome.
Thank you.
Tom, everybody knows me. Any excuse to talk about what I do, I'll take it, because I'm really passionate about the young people that I work with and about helping them change the direction that their lives are going. And I'm a big fan of restorative practices, and I try and use it every day at home with my children and obviously at work.
Yep. Likewise, I thought the films were absolutely fantastic, and everyone should see them. You know, I think it's, you know, look at the talent of Rory, and he's only just now shining. Why hasn't he had the opportunities before now? And that's my, I felt really honoured to be included, because we've got so much talent in our community. There's actually an African proverb that I don't know if you've heard of: if you don't embrace your children, they'll burn the village down just to feel the warmth. And that's what we're seeing, as our young people are, they're acting out because they want to be part of something, but we're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, like with our systems and with our communities, and it really needs to start very locally. I feel, we need to all take responsibility for the young people. So that was why I was quite happy to be involved, because I feel very strongly about that. You can make a difference at a very local level, and you can start earlier, and you can, so that Rory would shine at 12 and not have to wait. You know, for example, we see the talent in our young people, and we're trying to break down some of the barriers. Yeah, you can't change the trauma maybe that's happening, but you can provide some resilience, safe spaces, nurturing communities, and start where they are, not where you want them to be. And I think so often we just want the young people to be a certain way, but they're not the way we want them to be. So we need to start where they are and find out what is it that they want to do. So thanks for including the G20 in that.
You're welcome, and thank you, Emily. Your passion just shines through. So thank you. What a difference you've made to your young people.
Well, Gemma helps us on a Monday, so and it's very well received.
Has anyone got any other questions?
Yep, I think the films were really, really good, and I appreciate everybody's passion for supporting people to sustain their lives within an environment that is exceptionally difficult for some folk. However, everybody's talking about the passion and way forward for everyone. But can I just ask a question? See, all of this passion, are you actually, are you working with the educational system to support kids in very early stages of education? So as you're raising that bar, because we're talking, in my experience anyway, there's a lot of children who are really struggling right now and struggling to express their emotional well-being, which is challenging adults within an educational environment, and the result of that can be quite punitive because they can be taken away from mainstream classrooms, and then they're acting out their behaviour which challenges others. So it's just a question, that's all.
Can I answer that? So I work for early and effective intervention, so that is working with young people from 8 to 17. I often see those young people in school, where they're attending school. I work very closely with the pastoral care teachers, with the deputy head teachers, the head of years, and I link with them. I often have multi-agency meetings where we bring social work, education, and any other services that are working with that young people together to try and form a plan of where we can go to the next step, and we try and refer to further supports, to offer supports throughout school and beyond. But a lot of the young people that I'm working with are not great school attenders, and that's one of the barriers, but we find the resources to help and support them back into education, to stay in education, have alternative education resources, maybe part-time timetables, and the whole point of the programmes that I do with the restorative justice programmes that I do, those young people are prolific non-attenders. So we don't just do the programme and then say, see you later, good luck with your life. We link them in and try and either link them back to school if that is an option, but for some young people that just isn't an option. We will then look at what else they can go on, what plan they can do to move forward.
No, that's great. I just wondered if there was, I think, and it's perhaps the way I put it across, it's more about, very often, as you know, before young people stop attending school and start to find that behaviour is challenging them. So I think what I'm kind of asking is that awareness, is it readily available for children who are not going through those experiences at the time, so as young people actually know that these services are there?
So sometimes if there's situations going on within schools, I will go in and do whole class inputs or assembly inputs. A lot of the time, the young people that I'm working with on the programmes, they haven't always got offences. They might be hanging about with people that are, so it's trying to get them that step before. My whole purpose is early intervention, so it's getting them at the start of their criminal journey and trying diverting them away. So there's definitely stuff going on around that, either one-to-one or in group.
I guess just to follow on with that, you know, obviously I work at a very local level. I'm a community member, and that was why I started working with the young people. But what we recognised was the young people in our community were just hanging about, not at school. So we then went and contacted the school. One of the very first things we did was contacted Clevedon and Hillhead, where we knew a couple of the young people were working. We knew they weren't going to school age. One of them was 10. The other one was 12 at the time, and they were picking up charges and they were getting in trouble. So we went to the school and said, look, we want, you know, we could work with these young people and we could do things. So we're working at a local level. We now run forest school with the young people. We'll maybe take them do one-to-one. They come and do cooking at the youth club and give back to their community. But the system really needs to change. It really radically, there was an opportunity during lockdown. I don't know why they didn't take it. It is not fit for purpose. It's not inclusive, and real inclusion and empowerment doesn't happen for all of our young people that we work with. So what we've recognised recently is we've got a follow-on project for those 16s, because they're falling through the cracks when they leave school, or 15, 16, 17, and then they're just falling off the thing. So we're trying to get them work and personal development and further training, because schools really let them down. And I know it's not the teachers, it's the system. The system's really unkind and not, you know, so it's difficult because you're tinkering around the edges, doing little things, but the actual system isn't very good.
I totally agree,
yeah.
and that's why I was asking about that, because for me, it's not about, it's not just about supporting young people or supporting groups where young people have been struggling with their behaviours and it's impacted on someone else. You're absolutely right. During lockdown, we did have the opportunity to develop and practice how we were going to get those systems in place, because the system is broken and there's so many young people coming away from an educational system that they struggle with.
And they're made to feel really bad about
Yes,
it. And
yes.
I feel this is where, when the young people get blamed, we should be creating environments where they flourish and thrive, not where they feel really bad about it. Like, we need to be kinder, wiser, you know, stronger, better, you know, to deliver, you know, because I see sometimes the way adults deal with the young people, it just escalates the negativity. So there just needs to be less blame on the young person. I know they've done things, but, you know, like, the system really needs to...
There definitely needs to be supports as well for under 12-year-olds. We were having a conversation about that this morning, that it's really frustrating as a practitioner working with 8 to 17-year-olds, because I see what supports are there for 12 or 14 and over. There's a lot of, it seems to be where the funding is, but there's nothing. When I get a young person who's under the age of 12, it's really frustrating for me, because the school are like, we don't know what to do with them. And I'm like, there's nothing or very little that I can refer this young person to. And if they're not of a level to have social work involvement, then there's pretty much not a lot that you can refer them to. And that is really, really frustrating. And worse so because the age of criminal responsibility has increased. You've got this gap of young people who are still doing bad behaviours, but they're not getting the supports that they maybe would have done had it been. Not that I'm saying that the criminal responsibility should be lower, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the support should still be there for the families and for the young people. And we try our best, because like I say, I work with 8+, but it's really difficult because there's nothing there to refer on to. So if MD's putting in bids for funding, if you want to put in some and then give me your number, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've actually went into schools and did some educational inputs as well, primary and secondary, around hate crime awareness, around specific issues that have come up in the school that they're saying, we're really not sure how to tackle this. And we make it fun, we make it interactive with the kids enjoy it, they give us really good feedback on it, and so did the teachers, saying that was a subject that we weren't really sure how we tackled that. And I think that's pretty sad that our teachers are saying that. So it brings back the question, what do we do about education for our teachers, so that they know what they're handling, what they're dealing with, and how to actually educate our children that are coming up. Because hate crime's a big, big issue. And once people get a criminal charge for hate crime, it makes their life very, very challenging for going to get jobs, for getting houses, for moving on in life, and it sticks and they're labelled, and that's really worrying. So I think that education's got to be the way forward.
I'm surprised how little people. Sorry. I'm just surprised how little trauma is taught. It seems that people don't have an understanding of trauma in school. You know, it doesn't seem to be taught across the board.
A lot of it is all about awareness, and if we have awareness and we educate our teachers to obviously pass it on to our kids as well. And it's not just teachers' responsibility, it's everybody's. It's
totally.
community's responsibilities as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a great conversation.
Hi, just to echo as well that the films were marvellous. Everybody involved should be really, really proud of them. They're fantastic. I'm actually the hate crime policy officer for Glasgow City Council, so that's my kind of bread and butter. But and this is not a view that I necessarily personally prescribe to. Sometimes I come across a view working in this sector that restorative approaches, so-called kind of soft approaches, as sometimes people will refer to them, are not suitable for this type of criminality that victimises people in a really specific way. As I said, that's not my own personal view, but I'm sure it's one that everybody here has kind of come across. I was wondering if the panel could speak to their own responses to coming across that challenge in a sector that, you know, in which it's a challenge that you do hear kind of fairly regularly.
Absolutely. Soft approaches.
Quote unquote.
Gosh, there's nothing soft about challenging your attitudes and behaviours, challenging your upbringing, challenging everybody around about you, moving out of a circle where everybody has a certain set of thoughts, but you're thinking, hold on a minute, that's not right. That doesn't protect people, actually puts people at risk, puts me at risk, puts my whole family at risk. That's not an easy thing to do. It's a bold and brave place to be different for your peers and different for your family. So it's a really challenging thing for them, so I don't think there's anything soft about it. I don't know about anybody else. Does anybody think it's a soft option? No, changing those is really, really difficult, and it's an ongoing process. But what usually happens is it's a drip effect, because if the young person or the adult you're working with can change their attitudes and behaviours and actually go home and say, do you know what, I can't do that. No, that's no me. No, I'm not wanting to go through what I've already been through again, and I understand about people's rights, and that's wrong. Then that can actually affect other people round about, can isolate them as well. You've got to be really careful about how you teach people to move on from that, and how you teach them to say, no, it's not my bag, I'm not going along with that. That can't happen. It's really, really difficult, but soft approaches, absolutely not. I'll challenge that at the end.
Can I ask, what does that challenging look like to you? How is it that you challenge that, I suppose, is more my question.
It's about giving people the confidence, the awareness, the knowledge, the understanding. It's about saying to people, your rights are protected, why should other people's not be? And it's about saying, okay, so who deserves not to have their rights protected? And it's about giving that kind of understanding to a level where they're able to actually disseminate that to others. We ask people to fill in action plans, commitment to action plans, which is where they have to demonstrate change. They've got to come back with evidence. And without that, we can't obviously convince procurator fiscals, sheriffs, courts. We can't convince social work that people have actually changed, that they're actually looking at how they behave, and they're actually demonstrating it and giving us examples of where they've actually made those differences, where they've put their action plans into place, what supports that they've actually sought, and the responsibilities they believe it is to actually make those changes. And that's imperative, it's part of the programme.
I've done quite a few restorative conferences involving young people who have been involved in hate crime, and one in particular was quite a high-profile one. It was very all over the newspaper. It was a young person who was the mascot for Celtic, who had some disabilities. So there was an element of sectarian hatred as well as disability. And we did a conference involving that young person and the dad of that young boy, and what he felt was, especially because the crimes had been committed by young people, he'd not had the chance in a court to say, this is what you've done to me and my family, this is how I've been affected by that. And this gave him that voice. He flew in from Ireland to come and take part in twice, once to meet with me and then again to take part in the restorative conference. And at the end, everybody was hugging. You know, it was the dad of the boy who'd committed the crime, the dad of the boy who was the victim of the crime. Everybody was hugging. And years later, the boy who'd committed the crimes actually emailed me to say, I'm joining the army. Is this going to be a big barrier for me filling out that application form? And he'd never ever come back through the criminal justice system from that conference. That was a huge changing point for him in terms of his attitude to other people and the effect and harm that he'd caused others, and it gave the victim a voice that he'd never had. So it was really, really successful.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Thomas and I'm from the G20, Muriel. And what I would like to ask the panel is, being brought up, kind of being in prison, kind of be short sentences back and forward, and now starting on a new path of where I want to reach out, help others, and is there any advice you could help us on? And I'm starting now peer mentoring courses, drug, alcohol awareness, trauma, and just really what I'm reaching out to is, like before I seen this video, I'm coming out of prison. Really, I just felt as if they send you down, right? For one, you go and you try to get accommodation for the night, and then they're telling you, right, we haven't got the accommodation. So thankfully, I had family to back me up, but there was people standing at the gate that genuinely didn't have somewhere to go. And really just the various of the videos, watching the videos, I didn't know that there was that much help out there. Maybe it should be took out into the communities more. And really, I just want to know, it is hard starting off, so I'm kind of a bit nervous, but it's daunting, but I'm working on it. And I'd just like to thank G20 Works for the chance, they've given me the chance now to go and more or less prove my skills. And thanks for having us here today, because it's been a great, I've learned a lot, and I hope to take it away and learn from it, and just more or less a wee bit feedback as starting off. Is there any help, tricks, kind of that can further my knowledge?
I know from my point of view, I would love to have you come and input into my young people.
Don't steal Thomas.
I'm still. I often have try and get links to people like yourself to come and talk to young people who are starting to get involved in criminal behaviour, or either on the periphery of it or are really involved. And I've worked with quite a few people like you who are wanting to give back and to increase their confidence and increase their experience, and I'll get them coming along to my programmes and inputting into young people about their story and what happened to them and how they've ended up where they are and how they could do things differently, and it's amazing. So if you're ever looking for experience like that, please come and talk to the young people that I'm working with. But were you going to say the same?
No, Thomas works with that. Thomas volunteers, and I must say, like, this is the strength of local community, wouldn't you say, Thomas? Because he has the lived experience, he lives in the community, he knows the young people, and he's showing them a different way. So you're making a difference, he's, all the time, like, helping painting, but also reinforcing boundaries, helping us to get the message across to the young people. Amazing. That's where local community can just be really powerful. And like your experience, I feel has, I know you're wanting to learn and do more, but maybe you could reach out to other organisations and bring that back to help.
Also, I find, see, because the G20 Works now, they've just started getting funding, and this unit was closed for it's been closed for about 6-7 years maybe. Yeah. So we never had that chance. A lot of people, there is places where people can go, but a lot of people would like to stay in their own community and kind of give back. So what worries me is the funding there? Are we going to have a secure place? Because we don't know if that place is, we don't know if the funding's going to last a year, 6 months. And I see the work, what is going in there so far, and G20 works myself. I can't comment on any place else, but my journey is to go around and visit everywhere and more or less support each other, and you know what I mean. So it does scare me to think one day that them shutters are going to shut down and we're going to be left in the community where what we've started maybe not get finished, which is a lot.
You've seen that a lot over lockdown and stuff. Resources that were there are now no longer there, and it's really, really challenging. A lot of the youth supports and youth clubs and stuff that were there before lockdown just aren't there for young people to. So it's a worry.
But I think, like, see if you look long term, like when you look at one person, like being in prison at 16, 18, 21, stabbed 10 times, they're costing the system £1 million. Think what we could do with £1 million. We would, like, you know, like, it's like we don't really think long term. We don't really think. It's so frustrating because we know the difference it makes, don't we? You know, like you can see like the hope that it's giving to people, and so funding is an issue, but I think we're all quite committed and passionate. That unit is not shutting down. We'll do anything to keep it alive.
I'm just going to pass on to the microphone to Natalie. I was just thinking that there was one question you asked at the beginning that I don't know if we've really picked up on, that I don't know if anybody wants to talk about how we get the awareness out of the services, because that was a question you asked, because even though there is problems with funding and services being continuous, you said yourself that you didn't know about some of the services that were obviously mentioned in the films, and how has that message got out? So that's something that I don't know if anyone over here could, Margaret, and we'll come back, Natalie, we'll come back, sorry, just 1 second, just to pick on that, up on that bit.
Emily touched on earlier about, you know, the need to connect to communities and systems. So we have a system that's quite close to community justice, if you like, where it's those bigger funded services and community justice kind of direct ecosystem, and then there's that wider community, and it's something we've been tapping into for a wee while, or trying to tap into, is that people come from communities. It was you who said that, Emily. People come from communities, they're part of communities, they're not separate, and the role that wider grassroots community plays. And we think it's really important. And just kind of touching on some of the comments, I'm going to take the opportunity to do some wild advertising here. But hopefully you're all aware of, there's a Let's Get Communities Connected app. And, you know, Community Justice Glasgow delivered that in partnership with Glasgow Girls Club. So it was a kind of public third sector partnership, bringing in, because we recognise that need. So there's little stickers on people's tables that's a QR code to that app, where we map over 800 services. And as we try to map those real community services, because we recognise the difference those make. And I was wondering if maybe you could touch on, you know, that's an assumption maybe by ourselves. Something that, you know, I've definitely had an assumption for a long time. But could you maybe speak to how important that wider community connection is to you, and to be connected into a community, whether it's of interest or just directly in your own community?
Of course. Thomas, I was exactly the same as yourself. Before I started making these films, I wasn't aware that there were so many different organisations and services. I knew about Emily. But, you know, I was really surprised, and about the investment that each and every one puts in, you know, the compassion, the knowledge, the education, you know, we're trying to get the wider society. So I was as you know, surprised as you. And I do hope that this app does take off. I do hope that it works, because mostly everyone has a phone now. So, you know, hopefully it's not like you only see these places if you go and visit them. Because you don't want that. You want everybody to know what is out there for everyone. So yeah, thank you. Sure.
Thank you so much, Rory and Gemma, for doing the videos, and for your passion, I guess, for the work that you do, working with the young people. It's brilliant, because we all want to live in a safer Scotland, and we should all be aiming to do whatever it is to achieve that. Emily, you said something that really stood out to me, and I get really, really frustrated because everyone uses the word trauma-informed, right? But what does it mean to be trauma-informed? And when we scrape that back, services aren't really trauma-informed because we're so rigid with policies that sometimes we can't meet people where they're at because the policy says that we're not allowed to. So I guess, Tom Jackson, my question's for you. We talk about service user voices and being heard and influencing policy. How do the young people and people with lived experience really influence policy? Like really, because I know that people say that we're listened to, but are we really heard? Because I still read the same policies that are still rigid, that don't let me sometimes meet a client where they're at, because the policy says, you know, there's safeguarding issues, there's GDPR, or there's an age criteria that we can't support them. So how do we really, really influence and shift policies so that we can all be sitting in a room on the same page, and there's not 8,000 people in prison, we've reduced the numbers to 4,000, and we're doing more community paybacks, and we've got more community hubs, and we're not all bricking it in case our funding's stripped away next year. Like, how do we really influence policy? That's my question.
Great question, and a couple of you have touched on some of the aspects around it, and we'd love to have more dialogue. I mean, I think the first point, Emily, you made earlier was, you know, how much we invest in the custodial side of our justice system. You know, reoffending in this city costs us in excess of £700 million directly to the public purse. We've estimated in Glasgow probably about less than 14% of that money is spent on the prevention side. So all of our money is very reactive on the costly elements that don't necessarily deliver the outcomes. It wouldn't take much of a shift in that to invest in communities, to give greater voice, to respond to trauma in the ways that we know have that impact and deal with people where they're at. So we need to do some of that. Now, some of that is in our gift here as we're here today, and in a bit we'll talk about how we'd love to get people's voice today and what we do over the next few years in community justice for the city. But some of it is out with our hands. It's what's happening at a national level. And, you know, I know when Emily, when we had the film launch for your own film, the same sort of question came up, and I'll give the same answer I gave then is, you know, you've got a power yourselves as people with votes, with a voice, to ask the politicians, why do we invest in building a new HMP Glasgow that's going to be bigger than Barlinnie? You know, why are we investing in the wrong elements? It's not to say that, you know, that there aren't a wide range of justice tools, but we're using the big hammer to crack the wrong nuts. We're investing in the wrong bit of the justice system. So I would love to see a shift in that. And you know, some of that, as I said, I hope we can do together. I hope we can continue to have the conversations, but some of it as well, we need to push back and have a national conversation around these very same issues.
Tom, I'm just wondering if that's a good point, because we're over time, to just explain to people what might happen after the quick break.
We've had a really good dialogue so far, and we're going to ask you if you'd stay for a little bit more of that dialogue, be part of a conversation that says, how do we take some of the themes of today's films and think about what that means for us in the city and what we can do locally, what we can inspire nationally as well. We're going to ask you in a second, we're going to give you a break, go get a coffee and scones, but bring them back here, because we want to have a chat. We're going to break up into 5 tables, possibly more, depending on how the groups pan out. But we had 6 films, and we've picked out 5 or 6 themes there. So go to the table, and they'll be marked. You can see the flip charts are here. They'll be marked with the topic, and choose one that you're interested in having a dialogue about, what the film said to you and what that means for community justice in Glasgow. What should we be focusing our energies on? And I'll remind you, so we had a film focusing on women in the justice system and the unique aspects there, of through care, particularly prison through care. How do we see people through that system and make sure that it doesn't become a revolving door? About prevention and diversion opportunities, about social enterprises and the unique role they can play within the city and in the justice system, and about restorative approaches and restorative justice. We saw 2 films that kind of touched on that wide spectrum of where restorative justice plays a role. As I said, come back, pick a table. If any of the tables are too large, we're going to split you up. If people on the restorative side say, actually, I want to talk about restorative justice, I want to talk about restorative approaches, we'll split you up again. There'll be a facilitator at each table. We'll steal another hour of your time and really appreciate that being part of the voice of community justice going forward. Will be part of our 5-year plan going forward as well. So today's voices are really important.
We're just really quickly going to ask somebody from each table just to report back on the 3 points that you, or however many points you've got. But can we just ask that it's very brief if you can? I know you've all had really brilliant conversations, but just 3 main priority points to report back to the rest of the room, and we'll pass the mic round. I don't know if anybody wants to kick off, or our table could. Yep, up there. Brilliant. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. I've got. So we talked about policy change. The system doesn't really work in its current structure. We talked about our first actions being referrals being shared across the individual's path. So they answer a lot of questions for social work, and then they answer the same questions as they go to the third sector. And we talked about the EEI access to Care First, so that that information can actually begin at a younger age, so that that individual's just answering those questions at the start, and then that information is continued to share. We talked about a lot of kind of silo work, and that we can avoid a lot of that. Public information, we talked about professional workers and those with experience sharing a wider their experience, things like this, but more to a general public. But a lot of the information's here, but you're kind of preaching to the converted in this room, I'm sure. So a lot of that we maybe need something on a wider scale so that we can have these discussions. And we talked about communicating the cost. I think some that Tom had talked about earlier, and a lot of our work was talking about how much it costs to imprison someone or house them in secure units, and how much it's costing every day, basically compared against one of their suggestions was about housing a family and bring them together through that journey, rather than splitting everybody up, making things worse. We could probably spend less money and be more effective. But because we are a super group, we came up with 4. We talked about more focus groups. So this has been really useful. Everybody seems to be quite happy with the fact that there's shared experience and everybody works in different areas across the justice sector. So it's been sharing experience, talking about what we actually do, but consulting and actually empowering our community so they actually work together rather than just kind of talking about it. So beat that.
Who wants to go next?
Hi, this table spoke about women in the justice system, and we have managed to cut it down to 3. We followed the rules. The first one is information sharing. That could improve. Every stage of the justice system has a different recording tool, a different information system, and that in itself can be re-traumatising too, because women then have to retell their story at every single stage. And that leads us to the next one, which is in terms of being trauma-informed. It's not just a matter of staff training, it's environments. The environments also have to be trauma-informed and not re-traumatised just by their, the way that they've been set up. And that also led us into discussion about safer spaces in the community where women can go and, it's a safe place. They're not going to re-offend or basically have to enter into the justice system again just to find safety. And the last point was early intervention, and that's intervention at the earliest point, not just when someone's offending has escalated. There's lots of support when people are fully enmeshed in the justice system, but not necessarily at the first point of arrest. And that also links with information sharing and sharing information with the women on what is out there, what supports are out there, what she can access in the community and in her own community, not just where she's arrested or where she's been imprisoned. And So to have that information for staff would be very useful, and to be able to link up with other areas and know what women can be referred to there too.
So on this table, we've had diversion and prevention. So we've had lots of ideas, but I'll try and keep it to sort of 3. So there was a big point about education and how we can make sure that there's the appropriate guidance and training available in schools so that they've got the facilities to offer pastoral, holistic support to young people who are in need of that. And we also talked a lot about how we can embed third sector services and things more to, and not only for the service, for the individuals, so that they can have a clear pathway and they're not having to repeat themselves and, you know, sort of re-traumatize themselves by going through each different stage, but also how sort of funding and things can ensure that third sectors can work sort of together. And in terms of diversion, how we can try and make diversion the default, and how we can sort of promote confidence in diversion as opposed to prosecution and getting that message out to the right people. I think that's kind of the main 3.
Go and use this one. We had social enterprise, and our 3 points are that we would like to see more social enterprises dedicated to providing employment to people in the justice system. We know from Tom that 1/3 of social enterprises in the city have as their social priority, one of their social purposes, that they would provide employment to people with a criminal record. However, that we don't believe that there's the capacity within those organisations to be able to offer more jobs to people. So even though it's their social purpose, the capacity is not there. So if we were to actually support and fund the development of more social enterprises that were specifically dedicated to providing employment for people coming out of the justice system, that would be brilliant. We would like these, our second priority is we'd like them to be community-based structures that can capture the entrepreneurial skills at a grassroots level of people in the local communities in Glasgow. I think that would be amazing, and we've had some brilliant examples at our table of young people attached to the G20 and some of the enterprising schemes that they have running. And our third one was that it would be brilliant to see some of those enterprises actually be lived experience based and run, and to give more options for people within maybe who were needing to find a structure, support routine and move into employment, that if they were able to use whatever their lived experience might be and have more options available rather than the options being limited by just what the existing social enterprises had to offer. That was our 3. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, so last but not least, and actually I don't think there's any of the themes that have not really touched on what our table talked about. We had a great discussion about through care and improving through care in terms of planning going forward. And I suppose the biggest one that came out for us was communicating what's available. And that's right across the system. It's about communicating what's available from the prisons, right from the prison staff to the agencies, and from the agencies to the people who need the support, and that being joined up right through the system. So that ability to join that up. We talked about cultural change in terms of communicating what's available as well. That needs to be at the highest level, and communities need to really understand what community justice is and what it's about as well. So that communication about what's available and what it is was quite key. The other thing we talked about, amongst things, was the need to address the demand population in terms of through care. There is a complete lack of services available to people on demand. Just the way that the system is structured needs to structure around the needs of people and addressing those underlying needs of people, not the system itself. So there's no way for agencies to organise and plan for somebody's release when they've been on remand. They can be there for a long time, and they can have just as much complex needs as those who are sentenced. So in terms of improving through care, that would be a real focus. The other one was joined up working, and I know that kind of goes to communications a bit, but we were talking more about the systems talking to each other. Continuity of care. We used healthcare as the example. We were talking about in that, just medication following someone. like into and out of the system, be that community payback or in custody, but that real need for a joined up system and approach that goes from outside to outside again and follows somebody back into their community. So, you know, systems talking to each other. There's too much red tape, too much, you know, criteria to meet things, which I think was picked up earlier as well. And that needs to be supported by policymakers at the top level so that we can do that delivery better for people at the grassroots level.
Amazing. Just to say, if there are thoughts that you have that relate to themes that are different to the table you were on, there are these posters on the wall and there's post-it notes on the floor. Please feel free to just spend 5 minutes just putting anything that you think relating to other themes or that you've had thoughts on today and stick them on the wall, because then we can capture those as well. But I think all that remains is to say thank you very much for coming. And yeah, thank you to everybody. That's brilliant. So that's us finished for today. But please do put your thoughts on the post-it notes on the way out. And there's no hurry to leave, so you can keep chatting. Thank you very much.